So for the past couple months, there has been speculation as to what is going to happen with DeAndre Hopkins. Who are the Cardinals going to trade him to? And initially, it seemed like the Cardinals were trying to get some pretty high draft capital. Reportedly, a second-round pick was one of the things they were looking for when it came to trading for DeAndre Hopkins. But because his contract is so massive, no one has been willing to trade anything for DeAndre Hopkins. Because if you bring him in to your team, he will have a $19.5 million cap hit in 2023 and then a $14 million cap hit in 2024. So no team up to this point has been willing to trade anything and bring on that contract to their roster. But some interesting information did come out today from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, and this could potentially change things for the Chiefs and many other teams as well. So let me read this right here. So earlier today, Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated was on the Greg Better podcast and said this: "If Hopkins' price were to come down, I mean, some teams think they're going to cut him," said Breer. "I think the Cardinals are going to wind up cutting him. His market is not great right now. And even for teams like, say, Kansas City would need him to take a significant pay cut." Then it came out here from AeroPride.com around this interview as well. Breer confirmed that it might take Hopkins' willingness to agree to a contract similar to what former Chiefs wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster took last year. As a reminder, those numbers came in at 1 year for $3.76 million, $2.49 million guaranteed, not including incentives that could have earned Smith-Schuster up to $10.75 million. So it looks like no team, obviously no trade has gone down, has been willing to trade anything for Hopkins, and the Cardinals, according to some teams, are looking to potentially release DeAndre Hopkins. So the question, first off, why would the Cardinals release him if they, instead of trying to wait for some kind of draft capital to come their way? The thing is, with this situation, if they do release him, they do take on a dead cap hit for 2023, which is around, I believe, 22 or so million, but then they free up tons of cap space by releasing this contract for 2024. Some places I read, they would clear up around 25 or 26 million. If that's accurate, it's somewhere near there for 2024. And considering Kyler Murray does have that ACL tear, could miss the first part of the season, the Cardinals sort of seem like they're just sort of saying, 2023, it's not going to be our year. Let's just, clear up, cap space, try to trade DeAndre Hopkins. He wants to play elsewhere. Let's just try to free some things up. But it looks, up to this point, no team obviously has been willing to trade away any draft capital because they don't want to bring on that massive contract. And if the Cardinals do end up releasing DeAndre Hopkins, many other teams will likely come in to try to sign Hopkins because they can give him some kind of different contract where it makes much more sense against the salary cap. And so if we look at the Chiefs specifically, and why I think the Chiefs signing Hopkins is much more likely now, the Chiefs currently have around $5.5 million of cap space. So clearly, the $19.5 million cap hit you would take in 2023 would not really work for the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe there are some other contracts they could restructure, but that's a lot of cap space to free up when you barely have any. On the other hand, as it was noted on the AeroPride.com article from Albert Breer as well, that DeAndre Hopkins could sign a much smaller deal, which the Chiefs will be able to sort of handle on their salary cap. And so I think if we look at this situation, if the Cardinals do decide to release Hopkins, which could potentially happen, maybe not, but it seems like a very possible scenario up to this point, there would probably be lots of teams that try to convince him to sign with them. Maybe other teams offer more money than a team like the Chiefs, but when you look from DeAndre Hopkins' perspective, he's not a young player. He's made around $111 million in his career earnings. Obviously, he probably wants to make some money, but you would assume that for a guy like Hopkins, that he'd be willing to maybe take somewhat of a pay cut to come into Kansas City, play with the Kansas City Chiefs. They just lost Juju Smith-Schuster, McCole Hardman, and if you look at the Chiefs receiver core, MVS, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Hopkins would be the number one wide receiver in this offense. Even though last year he didn't put up his massive numbers as years prior, he did miss, I think he played 9 games total, of course, suspended 6 games, still had around 700 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I still think he's going to play at the top of his game. Maybe not quite his prime, but he's still, I think, up there, and I think people are sort of minimizing what he can do even in 2023. But for DeAndre Hopkins, you would have to assume that coming to Kansas City would be pretty enticing. You come in, be with a Super Bowl favorite once again, already coming off one recently, and really sort of cement your legacy in the NFL by playing with the best, if not one of the best quarterbacks, sort of building his way up there in Patrick Mahomes. So obviously, other teams will probably try to come in too if he's released. Maybe teams like the Bills, the Patriots. I don't know why you choose the Patriots over a team like the Chiefs unless they're offering you way more money. But a team like the Bills, you already have Stephon Diggs there, so Hopkins would maybe be the number 2 receiver. Of course, in Kansas City, you have Travis Kelce, but Hopkins would probably be the number one wide receiver, not tight end, but wide receiver. So it's pretty enticing, and if he does get released, it's much easier for the Chiefs to work some kind of new contract to really lessen that cap hit, because right now, if you trade for him, it's a massive cap hit, which no team has been willing to do up to this point. And so we'll see if this happens. It seems more likely to me the Chiefs could do it. Obviously, other teams could swoop in, but just wanted to share that most recent news regarding Hopkins. And if you guys would like to stay up to date with all NFL news, feel free to subscribe to the channel down below. But that's all I have for this video, and I'll see you guys next time.